In this segment, I want to take a look at the role of the rhythm guitar player in the bluegrass band, and take a look at better understanding the elements that make up the parts. There's a lot of good information out there about different samples of bluegrass rhythm and different variations. So instead of looking at just another handful of examples, I want to take a look at the different bits and pieces that go into making a successful bluegrass rhythm. Every note that you play should have a specific role, a specific purpose in this, and if it doesn't, it's potentially getting in the way and muddying things up. So we're going to take a look here at the basic foundational rhythm, and then we're going to add some different elements and talk about what they do for the rhythm. So let's talk about this job of being a bluegrass rhythm guitar player from a different perspective. Sometimes I like to describe this when I'm working with somebody as that the bluegrass rhythm guitar player is the equivalent of a drummer in, say, a rock band. We have similar duties, similar roles and purposes. If you think the downstroke, the G note, the root note on one, is the same thing as a drummer hitting his kick drum or hitting his bass drum. Typically, if you think about a standard straight beat, you've got kick on one, snare on two. Boom, chick, boom, chick, boom, chick. We're doing the same thing. Now imagine if that drummer's going boom, chick, but he's going crazy on all the cymbals all at the same time. You're not going to want to play with that guy. That's the same thing if we get a lot of strumming going on and a lot of busy work going on in this rhythm guitar. It's the equivalent of us going nuts on our cymbals. And that ain't going to work for anybody, at least not for very long. So you really have to sculpt things out so that everything you choose to do has purpose. Otherwise, you just distract from the tune. You distract from what everybody else is doing. And that just doesn't work for anybody. So keep it, when you're going through this, start off simple, just as straight as you can get and as solid as you can get so that your tempos are not varying. You're not missing any of your beats. Your downs or your up strokes, and you're just locked in. And then start to think, where do I have room? Where do I have room to add things in? And if you pick a specific song to look at or to try to play through, and if you sing along and you realize, hey, I just sang the end of a phrase, and now I've got this two beat opening before the next phrase starts, there you go. There's your chance to signify that with maybe an accented strike, or a little fill, or a little run, or something. So you're triggering that this new thing is going to happen, and that something has ended. Well, let's start off by establishing our chord progression. We're going to do just a G to C, back to G, and D progression here. So bass strings on one, and then the middle of the chord, or the rest of the chord, on two. One, two, and then the third beat, we're going to do this B note, which is the third of the chord, the third degree of the chord. Same thing for C. Root on one, strum on two, third of the chord, which will be your E note here, and then strum on four. Back to G. And then to D, root of the chord, strum, and then A, which is open A string. So put it together, and we start off with. That's the foundation we're going to build on. Now we're going to add a little bit to this thing. And the first thing we're going to add is to the D chord. We're going to do this little run. Gets us back to G. So it's D, C, B, D, to your G chord, or land a root. So here it is with adding that into the sequence. And what that does, that little run turns us back around and ends that 4-bar phrase and starts us back on a new 4-bar phrase. So it signifies that segment has been accomplished, completed, and we're starting a new one. So this is what that would sound like. Next, let's add a little walk that will connect G to C, and we're going to add the same sort of walk that adds C to G, connects C back to G. So the run just goes from the G chord, walks up to A, B, and then your next note would be the root of C. So that's a connection. That would connect G to C, and C back to G is E on the 2nd fret to your open G string. So it sets it up, put you back there on G. So far we've got a sample of something that ends a phrase, and we've got a couple samples of connecting between the chords. The next thing we're going to do though is say we have a turnaround that would be G for 2 beats, D for 2 beats, and that gets us back to G. So if we looked at it like this, we would have the G, so we went from our G chord, B, C, D, so it takes us to the root, walk up to the root of the D chord, and then we drop down to low E and walk back E, F sharp, G, there's a little add-on that you can do that I like to do to show that we're at the beginning of a phrase. And if I want to do G strum, or root strum, 3rd strum, excuse me, I might like to hammer on the first time I come to that. I'll hammer on this B note. But I'm not going to do it every time, otherwise it just takes up more space, and then it loses its meaning of what it signifies. And to me that signifies we're starting this phrase. And notice there I did it on the first half of that C chord, the first half of the measure. But I left a space in the second half. And so in this case, I'm using it at the front of each measure, the front of each section of chord, in order to signify the front. And then we let it flow, and it flows on through to the end of that phrase. If I were going to try to use that, and then I wanted something to signify the end of my phrase, I needed to punch it somehow that way, I might turn this last strum, so the last beat of the measure, into an 8th note strum. So you could do something like up down. It'd be something like this. The best way to get better at this is to take this approach, take this idea of only play what needs to be played and only help out where you need to help out with extra stuff, with accents, and start to develop parts for specific songs. You know, pick bluegrass standards or pick anything you want to look at and follow along through the melody, follow along, sing along, or if you play along to a recording of something you like, make sure you start with less and build up and only keep what you need in the end.